Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm David Bowles. Today we talk about some of the constellations of blogs I used to write and still write under the overall banner of David Bowles Blogs. We start with a 20-year glance back into the pause before you speak. We talked once on this podcast about the pause before a lie. That episode, Pause Before the Lie, examined the 200 millisecond hesitation that researchers have measured in the human voice when a speaker is about to say something untrue. I argued that the pause was proof of consciousness caught between realities, and that the hesitation itself might be the most human thing about us. Today I want to talk about a different pause, a longer one that has nothing to do with lying and everything to do with freedom. Somewhere in the last 48 hours, you started to type something and stopped. A sentence composed itself in your head, and you swallowed it. The thought of attending an event, visiting a website, searching a phrase flickered through your mind, and then it went dark. An edit was made before anyone requested one. Nobody told you to stop. The law prohibited nothing about the thought. An officer never appeared. You did it to yourself for reasons you probably cannot articulate, because the feeling that someone might be watching has become so ordinary that it no longer registers as a feeling at all. It registers as common sense. The first pause, the one before the lie, lasts 200 milliseconds and reveals a moral negotiation. This second pause, the one before you speak at all, has no measurable duration because it has become continuous. It is the subject of my new book, Carceral Nation: How the Prison Escaped Its Walls and Made a Panopticonic Society, began with a walk, a literal walk, down a street in Atlanta, where I started counting cameras and lost count before I reached the next intersection. Municipal cameras, license plate readers, private security feeds integrated into police networks, Ring doorbells registered with law enforcement, flock safety systems, photographing every passing vehicle. 16,000 cameras in one city linked directly or through voluntary registration to the police department. One camera for every 8 residents. That arithmetic unsettled me. What unsettled me more was realizing that I had walked that same street dozens of times without noticing. The infrastructure had become invisible. And invisible infrastructure is the most powerful kind because you cannot resist what you cannot see, and you cannot name what you have already accepted as background noise. The book traces how we arrived at this condition. It starts in the 1680s with colonial lantern laws that required enslaved people to carry lit candles after dark so that white citizens could see them coming. Forced visibility. The first American surveillance technology was fire in a black hand. From there, the principle of compulsory visibility moves through Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon, the architectural fantasy of a prison where a single guard could observe every cell simultaneously. Bentham understood something that took the rest of us 2 centuries to rediscover. You do not need to watch everyone all the time. You only need to make everyone believe they might be watched at any time. The possibility of observation disciplines behavior as effectively as the fact of it. Michel Foucault seized that insight in 1975 and turned it into a theory of modern power. But the book argues that Foucault stopped too soon. His analysis described how disciplinary logic spread from the prison to the school, the hospital, the factory. The philosopher did not live to see it spread into the smartphone, the doorbell camera, and the algorithmic risk score. And none of his followers anticipated the moment when ordinary citizens volunteered to do the watching themselves. That is the arc of Carceral Nation. 15 chapters across, 5 parts, moving from the colonial origins of American surveillance through the intelligence apparatus of the Cold War, the post-September 11th mass surveillance state, the commercial data economy, and the neighborhood platforms, where your neighbors now report your movements to one another. The final chapters examine something that I think matters more than any policy question. What happens inside the mind of a person who lives as if she is always being observed. This is where the book meets the territory we explore on this podcast. The human meme has always been interested in consciousness under pressure, in the moments where external conditions reshape interior life. Surveillance does exactly that, and it does something different from ordinary social conformity. When you modulate your behavior because a neighbor might disapprove, you can see the neighbor, assess the stakes, push back. When you modulate your behavior because an invisible system might record, categorize, and retain the data indefinitely for purposes you will never learn, the conformity becomes structural. The searches get censored before fingers touch the keyboard. The protest goes unattended, the meeting skipped, the conversation deferred. All of this happens without instruction, without a single representative of the state making contact. The discipline is self-administered. Bentham called this a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind, in a quantity hitherto without example. He was describing a building. What we have built is something he could not have imagined, a condition in which the watched citizen experiences the watching as convenience, as community, as safety. The coercion disappears inside the comfort. She may be the one holding the camera. I spent 3 years researching this book, drawing from federal court filings, police department disclosures, municipal camera registries, academic studies of chilling effects on speech, and the published record of how commercial data brokers sell location data to government agencies without warrants. Every claim is sourced. Every camera is documented. What surprised me most was how recent the acceleration has been. Ring doorbells, which have transformed millions of front porches into nodes in a police surveillance network, launched in 2013. In a single generation, we built an infrastructure of observation that exceeds anything Bentham or Foucault imagined, and we did it voluntarily. We paid for it, installed it ourselves, and downloaded the app. When citizens surveil one another through neighborhood platforms, posting photographs of strangers who walk too slowly past their houses, the work of the police state gets distributed across the population. And that distribution is where the old language of civil liberties breaks down, because the danger to freedom has migrated from the government into the population itself, into a society that has learned to watch itself. But here is the question I keep returning to, the question that lives at the center of both this book and this podcast. If you have learned to censor yourself so thoroughly that you no longer notice the censorship, are you still free? If the guard tower has moved inside your mind, and you maintain it yourself, and you call it responsibility or prudence or just being careful, has the prison won? In Pause Before the Lie, I argued that the 200 millisecond hesitation was consciousness asserting itself, proof that we still recognized the weight of departing from truth. The pause I am describing today carries a different weight. It is consciousness retreating. It is the moment when a free citizen decides, that the safest thought is the one left unfinished. And unlike the pause before the lie, which ends when the speaker opens her mouth, this pause has no ending. It runs in the background like an operating system you forgot you installed. I wrote this book because I believe the answer matters, and because I believe the first step toward answering it honestly is seeing the architecture clearly. The walls came down, and the logic walked out through the gap. And the pause before you speak, that half-second of recalculation that has become so automatic you mistake it for your own voice, that pause is the prison working exactly as designed. Carceral Nation, How the Prison Escaped Its Walls and Made a Panopticonic Society, is available now from David Bowles Books in paperback and Kindle editions. You can find it at bowlesbooks.com and Amazon. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles, wishing you an open evening and a more secure tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.